The Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC, says it started the process to extradite former Petroleum Minister Desiani Alison Madueke to face corruption charges because it is impatient with the delay of UK authorities in trying her. Since leaving government, Alison Madueke has been implicated in various corruption cases involving bribery, fraud, misuse of public funds, and money laundering within and outside Nigeria. And to discuss this with us is a lawyer, Chuma Nwaokolo. You're welcome.
Thank you very much.
So let's talk about this. Now, the issue has been on for a very long time. 3 years this case has been on, and the court at the point ordered the forfeiture of her properties and the seizing of some sums of money. Now, is this too late to call?
It's not too late. The statute of limitation does not run in this kind of cases, so
okay.
it's certainly not too late.
So the EFCC bringing up this case at this time, it's been 3 years, and EFCC believes it can take over. Now, is the UK under any obligation to release Desiani to Nigeria for prosecution?
Well, usually when they receive extradition requests, they have certain tests which they need to run.
Okay.
It's usually a political as well as a legal decision. First is a political decision because the Secretary of State has to decide, has to agree that extradition should be done. And it's also a legal decision because it has to go to the court.
Okay.
And the court has to consider the requests and find out if, well, there are certain decisions they need to take before they can order the requests.
Okay, so how long does it take for this to happen, this extradition to happen, since it's you mentioned it's a legal process as well as a political process?
It's certainly not going to be an overnight thing. Definitely, well, the court could take anything up to 3 weeks, but even having taken a decision for or against extradition, we must also factor in appeals. There will definitely be appeals whether it is granted or not. So there is a process that's going to run, not to talk about a political process.
About this, now the issue has been on for a very long time, 3 years. This case has been on, and the court at the point ordered the forfeiture of her properties and the seizing of some sums of money. Now, is this too late to call?
It's not too late. The statute of limitation does not run in this kind of cases,
okay.
So it's certainly not too late.
So the EFCC bringing up this case at this time, it's been 3 years, and EFCC believes it can take over. Now, is the UK under any obligation to release Desiani to Nigeria for prosecution?
Well, usually when they receive extradition requests, they have certain tests which they need to run.
Okay.
It's usually a political as well as a legal decision. First is a political decision because the Secretary of State has to decide, has to agree that extradition should be done. And it's also a legal decision because it has to go to the court.
Okay.
And the court has to consider the requests and find out if, well, there are certain decisions they need to take before they can order the requests.
Okay, so how long does it take for this to happen, this extradition to happen, since it's you mentioned it's a legal process as well as a political process?
It's certainly not going to be an overnight thing. Definitely, well, the court could take anything up to 3 weeks, but even having taken a decision for or against extradition, we must also factor in appeals. There will definitely be appeals whether it is granted or not. So there is a process that's going to run, not to talk about a political process. As a matter of fact, the real issue is whether or not they should have actually waited to see what will happen to a UK case. Because if the offense is supposed to have happened in Nigeria, this is a logical place where the trial should have been done.
Okay.
And there are obviously benefits for any state that carries out an anti-corruption trial. If the state succeeds, obviously whatever fines and forfeitures inure to the state itself, not to the country where the money is alleged to have come from.
Okay.
For instance, the Bori cases or the Halliburton cases, whether to the UK or the US, fines as much as $500 million goes to the state that carries out the prosecution. So if indeed there was any case to be made out against the former minister, the logical thing would have been to immediately trigger prosecutions in the country where the offense was supposed to have been committed.
So it means that also the UK can also decide to take over the case and prosecute her there before sending her to Nigeria?
Yeah, usually there is the issue of the dual criminality before they would actually grant an extradition request. The offense that is alleged to have been committed should be something that is that is a criminal in the authority within the laws of the country extraditing.
Okay.
So they would always have the option to carry out prosecution. But obviously when a request comes, the court would also consider the logical venue for the prosecution. Where would, for instance, the evidence be more available? If you're looking for witnesses and things like that, where would be the logical place where trial will be more efficient?
But in this case, where would be the logical place?
Transparently, it would be Nigeria.
Okay.
Unless, of course, the particular incidents that are alleged to have occurred happened abroad, or particularly in the United Kingdom. But if these are offenses supposed to have been committed within Nigeria, then Nigeria would have been the logical venue for trial in any case.
Okay, let's look at this same matter. It's all over the news. It's everywhere. And a lot of people have termed it media trials. Now, how does this impact on the process of investigation?
To a very limited extent. Usually, we don't have jury trials here. That would have been the normal problem when a case is over-ventilated in the public space, and people who would eventually end up on a jury bench would be unduly poisoned by their knowledge of media facts in quote, obviously. But here we have a system where all trials, decisions of fact and law are made by a judge. And so they are usually by training impervious to whatever happens in the media. The objection against media trial is more fundamental, that people have their reputations, such as it were, completely destroyed before they even come before a court. It would be the case, for instance, in a rape case, where whether a man who's been alleged to have raped a woman, whether he wins or loses in court, becomes moot because he doesn't have a life to return to.
That's true.
Because even if he proves his innocence in court, his reputation is destroyed in the public, who may never get to hear about what happened in court eventually. So yes, the media trials are not ideal. If there is a case to be made against anybody, it should be taken as quickly as possible before the courts.
Okay, looking at this, you mentioned earlier that an appeal can be made when the case is being brought up in the courts in the UK, in the relationship between UK and Nigeria. Now, on what grounds do you think Desiani will be able to appeal on?
Usually, there are not too many grounds of appeal. Usually, if a case has the death sentence and the person who is sought to be extradited is charged on an offense which is punishable by death, that's already that's almost certainly will not be granted. That request will almost certainly not be granted, because the law actually does prohibit the UK from extraditing to countries that might apply the death sentence. So, but other conditions would be if, for instance, the case is flawed, because, like I said, it's both a political and a legal decision. So, if a judge considers the prima facie case that is made out against the person sought to be extradited and feels that there is no strong case, then obviously an extradition will not be. So a prima facie case has to be made out on the facts. Okay,
before we go, the EFCC, like you mentioned, that it's going to be a long haul before anything can happen, and the EFCC said it is impatient with the delay of the UK authorities in trying her. Now, how can the EFCC, what can be done to fast track this?
You mean with the UK authorities?
Yes.
Well, they have absolutely no control over the UK authorities and what they do. I mean, it's like the Ibori case, for instance. You can only control what's within your borders, and decisions that happen abroad are entirely up to the prosecuting authorities, who have to consider several factors, including the likelihood of success. So all we can do really is to control what happens within our own territory.
All right, Chuma Nwaokolo, a lawyer, thank you very much for talking to us on this matter.
You're welcome.